My name's Chris.
And I'm Kristie.
This is the Washing Up Podcast, and it is Bakeoff season.
I know, I'm so excited.
I know, it's the greatest time of year. It's the most wonderful time of year, or a couple of years, depending on how long Foxtel hang on to them. But good news is, well, there's no episode today, obviously, because the episode's Tuesday night, and we haven't, obviously, it hasn't happened yet. But what we do have is something a little bit better than that.
Just a bit special, you know?
Ladies and gentlemen, Darren Purchese.
Thank you, guys. It's a real pleasure to be on and talking to you, because I know you're massive fans of the show, and I know a lot of your listeners are true fans of the show as well. So it's great to have this conversation with you and tell you about my story and my love of Bakeoff as well.
Oh, fantastic. Well, first of all, welcome to the family.
Yes.
You know, you're now the patriarch of the shed. No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure at all.
Yeah, I do feel a little bit of pressure. There's a huge responsibility because the show is obviously much loved. Of course, I was a fan as well coming into this. So, I do know that the tone that has been set in previous seasons needs to be kept. And, rather than me personally trying to replicate anything that's been done, just trying to bring my own personality and my knowledge and hopefully some warmth and some laughs.
Oh, excellent. So no going around, just to random people in your life practicing a Paul Hollywood shake.
Yeah, don't do that. No.
I think I need my own thing, but I haven't quite worked out what that is. But
there's not enough fake tan for Paul. So it's in terms of it's obviously, as you said, it's a much loved and much treasured sort of role within Bakeoff, and it's the vibe of the series as a whole, which kind of for us makes it a bit different from most food television that you see as well. Is that something that you've noticed just in the time that you got to spend inside that shed, and obviously watching as well, that it's just a very different feeling?
Yeah. Do you mean from the new one or just?
Yeah, well, in general, but especially with what you've then experienced.
Yeah. There is definitely a warmth in the Australian version. I've been a fan of the UK version since it started, and it's gone through lots of different changes. And I'm still a fan of it, still watch it. But it kind of, I guess it maybe have changed a little bit over time. But I do feel the Australian one does have an incredible warmth and generosity and really good spirit. And I think that's something going into this that I thought that I would love to try and continue, because it's just it just makes for really good feel good TV. I'm not a massive fan of bitchy drama.
Yeah.
I'm really into like positivity, trying to help people achieve far beyond what they thought they were capable of, and just encouragement I think is really good. There's enough drama on TV these days, so I think this one really stands out as something that is positive and super fun, and just something to to watch while if it's raining outside or
exactly.
Yeah, it's just really cool. So hopefully I can continue with that sort of tone and that theme.
Well, you see, I like when we heard that you were coming on to Bakeoff as the new judge, we were very excited because we thought that you'd be a good fit. How did that come about? Like, was it just a random phone call? Did you get a knock on your door? Was there a special courier that?
A cake slice arrived. My name on it.
Except this.
It was a very exciting. Well, I guess it was an email that saying they were interested, but it was very exciting for me because it's always a show that, as I've said before, I've loved. So this for me is like the dream gig, and I'd always had sort of ambitions that I would like to do it, but of course, in the world of TV and food media in particular, it's very competitive. And I didn't put myself forward for it. I was approached by the producers. And I'd heard that Maggie put my name forward. So she's always been a huge supporter of me personally. I mean, she's a huge supporter of the industry and of chefs in general, and obviously she's a food icon. So to have Maggie kind of recommending me was really special. And I guess the producers went from there, and then I just jumped at the chance and I said, yeah, audition whenever. And so I had a few auditions, and pretty nerve-wracking, and I managed to get the gig, which is just phenomenal. It's just I'm so pleased. It's like it really is a dream gig for me.
I'm now imagining them that they're putting you in front of a table with gingham on top, you know, and a random cake, and they're like, now we want you to say these lines. No, can you give us more zest?
Yeah, it's hard because, you know, you want to be positive the whole time. So if something doesn't work out as well as someone wanted, I guess they know more than anyone. You don't want to heap anything on them. You don't want to create anyone to be upset, but also you need to convey what's happened to the audience at home. So there's a fine line between, going in and being, hard on someone, or, you kind of look for some positives, because there's always positives, even in a bad bake.
Exactly. And it's something that Nicole Rogers, the former producer, talked about when she was running the show, and then when she did the podcast with us. And her ethos, and it's something that I know that Alenka, who's currently there, sort of follows, is that love the bakers, love the bakes. And that whole idea of this is about giving them their chance to go out and try things and shine. And if you feature the bakers and the bakes as your centerpiece and sort of support that and lift that up, you end up with a show that is, heartwarming and lovely and showing development.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. And I think, the real stars of the show are always the bakers. And, people tune in because they want to see what other people are making, whether they can make it themselves or whether they're wowed by something or get inspiration. But I think the real stars of the show are the bakers. And I think I'm hoping that the new cast that we've got this year, it's still the focus is on the bakers. And I do believe the show is bigger than, the hosts and the judges. That may change over time. And I'm sure after I've gone, the show will continue because it's so well loved. So hopefully the new cast transition will be, pretty seamless and kind of, by the by, really, because it really is all about what the bakers are doing and where they come from, what part of Australia they're from, what their stories are, and what inspires them. Because we're always learning. And I found I was, finding bakes that I hadn't seen before, or flavor combinations that weren't familiar to me. So I'm as much enthralled by what they do as hopefully the audience are at home.
So you're in a unique position, having been a fan, and you sit at home, you go, oh, I would have said something like a technical like this, or I would have done you're in the position where you can do that now.
Yeah.
So is there anything that you pulled out from the back pocket that you've been sitting on?
It's just, I genuinely don't know what they're going to bake until I get, I get there, start walking around. So it's often there's a surprise to me. And I think, I look at the challenge and I think, I would go this way, or I'm expected to go this way. But more often than not, they go a completely different way. And I think that's the real beauty of this, because no one can really predict what they're going to be baking. So it makes it really fun and really, I guess, a little bit educational for people as well. So it's definitely an element of surprise in every single challenge that they have. And yeah, I really love it. And I just love the privilege and the opportunity that I've got. I just really am grabbing it with both hands, and I'm going to try and do it for as long as possible and to the best of my ability.
So in terms of, we've sort of, if you've watched the show long enough, everyone sort of understands the judges' flavor profiles, which is one of the things I love about going into this series, is that there's a very set understanding from people going in of Maggie liked this or didn't like this. Matt liked this but didn't like this. You don't give Maggie beer bubblegum flavored chili. You just don't do it. With pecans. Don't give her bubblegum flavored chili with pecans. It's just it's a disaster waiting to happen. Did you sort of have anything going in where you were like, well, this is not something I'm necessarily a massive fan of, and I don't want to see that in a bake? Or, the way that you approach that traditionally, Maggie always said that if she didn't like it, but she was going to give it a fair shake with whatever it was. Is there anything that,
You're like, oh,
you're like, probably don't?
taking one for the team here.
Yeah, well, I guess from the bakers' point of view, this year in particular, it was really hard for them because they had no, reference of, Darren doesn't like this or Rachel's not keen on that. So they really were able to cook without that sort of incumbent.
Which I like that, actually, the fact that
it is good. Certainly, I would always judge it on its technical ability and how it works rather than my own personal preference. But there's generally not a lot I don't like. I'm a huge food fan, and if ever there is a food or something that I guess that I'm not too keen on, I always kind of put it back on me. I always kind of think, well, maybe I haven't been cooking it right or preparing it right because it's a food for a reason, and millions of people love it. I used to have a bit of an aversion to okra, which you won't see a lot on Bakeoff.
No, not really.
I know that it's massive around the world. Billions of people really enjoy this food. So I guess I always think to myself, well, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm not cooking it right, or maybe I haven't had it how it's supposed to be done. So I always go in things with an open mind and try and work it that way. And I love to be, I guess, surprised. And I really want there to be a food that I guess I don't like that I end up really liking, because then I'll learn more about that ingredient, and then I can go and take that away and put it in my repertoire as well. But there's not a lot. I'm a real I love everything. Obviously, I'm known for my sweets, but I cook savory food all the time. I'm cooking at home every single day. I'm not one of those chefs who, can't be bothered to cook when they go home. I just love it. So yeah, it's fun for me. And having bakers from lots of different diverse cultural backgrounds means that I'm exposed to more and more cuisines and less familiar flavors for me. I think I've got a decent palate, so I can kind of work out whether things work or not. But certainly, I'd love to see new stuff. So hopefully the audience do as well.
Is there anything on your list of you want to make suggestions for future bakers of this is what I like, or I haven't tried this and I'd really like to?
No, I don't want to put
okra bake.
Yeah, I don't want to say something and then all of a sudden we turn up in another season and everyone's cooking the same thing. I love desserts that aren't too sweet. I love a balance, so I love tanginess, and probably a lemon tart would be my favorite all-time dessert because I used to cook it a lot back in London, and it's a classic. And Just Set is really great. I do love. I'm known for my sort of technical and tricky desserts, but when I go home or if I have a dinner party, I'll bust out a classic.
Something straightforward.
Yeah, for sure. Because that I kind of think the stuff I sell is stuff that you wouldn't normally make at home. So I try and now with my recipes and my content that I get out, I try and get out stuff that people can actually achieve in less than 3 days.
and it's one of those.
We don't have lockdowns anymore.
We don't have lockdowns to do that. But it's a really interesting thing too that you bring that up, because it's one of those debates you hear on food TV all the time of the idea of complexity versus simplicity done really well, or something that's left field out of the box. And I guess one of the things that works with Bakeoff so well is that you get that combination. And a lot of the time, some of the stuff that's the trickiest is not the stuff that looks tricky. It's really small flavor balances. It's people deciding to put rose water in a bake, and you're like, okay, yeah, but that's really delicate in the wrong thing. So a little bit of that goes a long way. It's sort of where I think Bakeoff excels, is that it shows you where, and you've done things like MasterChef and those sorts of shows as well. They do the really overboard challenges a lot of the time, which is really good television.
Yeah.
But there's a complexity in that simple balance and trying to get that right. And I think Bakeoff sells that better than most shows.
Yeah, I think so too. It's not easy making the perfect sponge. There's a lot of variables in it, and it's something that's very simple. And lots of people know how to make a cake, but it's a tricky science. So they've only got a certain amount of time for most of their challenges. So as you've seen on MasterChef, as the season progresses, they seem to have, longer and longer to complete these more and more complex challenges. And that's kind of MasterChef's thing, and it works really well. And it's fun when they get to the final and they're cooking for making
9 hours.
Yeah, it's really fun. But on Bakeoff, there's the same amount of time usually for every challenge, and they've really got to tread that tightrope between creating something that's too simple. You don't want anyone, finishing half an hour early and they've made something that is technically precise, but it's just not really. They haven't really put themselves out there. You want to see a little bit extra. There is a fine line between coming up with too many different components and trying to be too clever that you end up failing on the bake in the first place. That's probably the advice that I would give bakers is
we call that doing a flora from the UK
British
Bake-Off, where it would be like, you need to cook a chocolate cake and there'd be macarons.
You do a macaron tower off the back of it, and it's really
rolls around,
and it's really interesting because there's always bakes that trip people over, and like it's sometimes. So, for example, in Australia, one of the most infamous bakes that tripped everybody over was Maggie B had them make jam drops, and it just failed. And I'm talking to everyone in that season, and you go, so what was the hardest thing you made? And they went, jam drops, 100% jam drops. And everyone's like, what? And they're like, yeah, you wouldn't think it. In Canada, the most epic challenge that I've ever seen was Bruno Felddyson in Canada set creme caramel and walked back into a puddle. None of them had set.
Creme caramel is hard. It's
hard. And this was the thing where it was like he just walked in and just started laughing, and everyone was like,
but not in a nasty way. It was just in that kind of like,
he walked. He's like, guys,
days,
But it's that thing of people think that the really ultra complicated bakes are the things that are going to make people fall over. Where at times it can be something like a jam drop.
Yeah, that's when you find out the real. A jam drop is, very, very simple. So there's nowhere to hide.
No, exactly. If there's something slightly goes wrong, it's there, and you can't go, oh, well, I'll just put some fondant over the top of that, and, a flour, and we're good. We're good. No one can see it.
Something with a lot of complexity and a lot of components, you can kind of, you can hide a little bit behind the fact that it's really hard. And you can also, there could be parts of that are really good technically and parts that you failed on, but usually it's the time and just the sheer amount of work that they've got to do. But in something like a jam drop, a basic bake, there's absolutely nowhere to hide. Scones would be a really good one as well. A seer knows how to make a really, really good scone with jam. So from a TV point of view as well, I understand, like, you can't have stuff that's really, really simple. You kind of want to,
it's got to have a little bit of the showmanship, a bit of razzle dazzle.
So from my point of view, creating technical challenges has been so much fun. It's been an absolute dream because I've seen so many over the years, and to get to set my own is really good. And my background on MasterChef has been very, very helpful for that, because they would sort of say, right, whereas other chefs would go in and just kind of create whatever, I would kind of the guy where they would say, can you create a challenge where they've got 2.5 hours, you can't use coconut, you can't use this, and then I kind of work back from that. So I've got a kind of mind where I can create something that that I know that they can fit in the right time frame, that I know is going to be really good TV, that I know is a blend of like easy, but also there's complexity on there. So that's been really fun. I love creating those technical challenges.
And the bonus is you don't have to walk down a very long hallway holding the...
holding it. Put it down delicately. You are baking my... Oh, it fell over. Okay, give me 5 minutes. Let me just
reset.
Routine.
It's very nerve-wracking. I've been on set a lot of times for MasterChef and setting my pressure tests, and you've got to make sure that what you've got under there is absolutely impeccable as well. So there's it's not an easy setup to get.
It's not going to melt under studio lights.
Exactly. If there's an ice cream on there, it's got to come on. You've got to kind of walk on, without the ice cream and put the it's under there, and then
and then go.
They turn around and stuff because it's got to look absolutely impeccable for that hero shot. But
exactly.
The technical bakes are really fun. So I enjoy finding out, and having some input in what the theme weeks are going to be. And then kind of I get assigned which weeks I've got, and Rachel will have 5 and I'll have 5, and then I can come up with something that fits the brief. But also there's a matrix of dishes that have been done before, and it has to fit in that matrix. You can't do something that was just done on the British Bake Off, or you can't do something that was done a couple of seasons ago. So
unless you're British a couple of years ago, where they actually stole the Australian Matrix, that happened, by the way, and we've talked about it before. Yeah, vegan Week and a couple of others got literally lifted and taken to British before we got to put them to air.
That's good. That's good that they're watching from afar and taking inspiration.
Well, again, it's the benchmark, and of course, you're getting to do this journey this year as well with Rachel Koo. And sort of developing that dynamic on camera and getting to work closely with Rachel. How's that been to sort of build that relationship?
I love Rachel. She's the best. She's the absolute best. She's such a professional. It's unbelievable. I'd never met her. Well, actually, I tell a lie. I'd met her about 10 years ago. We'd done something. It's probably a bit longer than that now. But I'd never worked with her. And obviously, she's got an extensive library of stuff that she's done in food media. She's published lots of books, and she's been on TV all over the world. She's got a fantastic knowledge of food. And I was a little bit in awe of meeting her and working with her, but we clicked absolutely straight away. And I like to think it's because I'm a friendly guy, but really it's because she's so lovely. There's no airs and graces about her. She's an absolute pro. She'll work harder than everyone else. She knows all about food. She's so lovely and genuine and very generous. And we just spent all of our time off together. She was over in Australia, and of course her family life is overseas. She lives in Sweden. So she was we hit it off, and we were out on our days off and visiting bakeries and kind of restaurants and taking pictures of food and just loving it. I absolutely adored her. She's awesome, best person to work with. And
was it also funny going into like those bakeries and restaurants and stuff, and you're like they probably don't quite recognize me, but I'll watch their reaction for Rachel Koo when she walks in. She's
all of them. I was hanging out with my gal pals, Cal, Natalie, and Rachel, and everyone's getting stopped apart from me, which is fun. but
little bakeries around there too.
Yeah, there's Sydney's got a great food scene, great bakery scene. So we were loving it, and the weather was nice, and we were just hanging out. Natalie though was stopped more than anyone.
Yep,
really.
She's literally mega.
I'm so thrilled to hear that, because one of the things we talked about when it was all announced is that a lot of the mainstream focus would be on obviously you and Rachel and Cal, but I've followed Community Channel on YouTube and that for years, and I was absolutely thrilled to see her get that role.
Yeah, she's awesome. She's so she's a very complex person. She's totally unstarry. It's almost to the point where she doesn't really feel comfortable. I don't think being in front of the camera too much. I think she's amazing.
Which kind of makes Bakeoff the perfect thing for her to do, because it's not really that ultra starry airs and graces sort of show. You get to goof around a bit. You get to do crazy time calls. You get to to do wacky intros.
Cal and Nat are just a dream pairing. It's really hard to follow other people, and Claire and Mel were they were amazing. They made that show, and they're so funny, and to try and follow those guys must be really hard. But Cal and Nat have put their own stamp on it and brought their own personalities to the role. And they've really clicked together. I think, without speaking on their behalf, I think they've clicked together, and we all hung out. And I think it works really well. It's a slightly different dynamic, and they've obviously got different approaches to comedy and hosting. Natalie she can be quite dark at times.
We love that.
She's so funny. She's so funny. It's hilarious to work with them.
Considering Cal Wilson, because she's like, I love her to death. Like, I just think she's one of the best comedians in Australia. Or, you know, we'll take her and they can have Russell Crowe back in
Swap.
Is, you know, I think that she can handle anything because she's worked with Akmal, like on live radio. So I think if she can work with Akmal on live radio and get through that, she can handle anything. And I do love Akmal Sali too. So
just bang him down for a minute. So to slide away from Bakeoff briefly, we will come back to it at the end. But I've sort of wanted to talk a bit more about your food journey as well. And I love using the word food journey because it makes me feel pretentious.
Because you get many opportunities.
It's one of my favorite things you hear in food media. We're like, so talk about your food journey. It's like, you know, so, you know, I used to just call it a career.
I mean,
but
yours was a literal journey.
Yours is a literal food journey. Washing dishes in Greece.
Yeah, I did. That was you're going way back now. So you know, I've spent about 3 years of my life in Greece. Over time, lots of different stints. But yeah, I was out in I said I'm going to go traveling. I ended up in Greece. I ended up in a kitchen, and I was washing up at a resort. It's like a water sports resort, and looking back on it, the kitchen was just horrendous. It wasn't the best food at all, although people were paying a premium. But I didn't know that then. I really loved being in a kitchen. It was just like a really great vibe. And I just loved sort of rushing around. And because it was a resort, there was a 2-week menu. So people never stayed longer than 2 weeks. So no one's ever going to get the same food twice. But, by the end of the season, all the chefs kept leaving. They kept coming and going. I kind of knew the food. I knew all the
been here long enough.
Yeah, I did. I ended up cooking. You know, I think the last walkout of all the chefs, there was a few weeks left of the season, and one of the bosses said to me, and my friend actually, who was working with me, said, "Right, you two do you want to be chefs? Do you want to be in the kitchen? Because you know the food." And I said, yeah, I'd love to. My friend wasn't into it. He wanted to go out sunbathing. So he said, right, what section do you want to do? And I said, right, I want to do the sauce section, I want to do the meat section, I want to do all the hard stuff. And my mate was he said, I'll do the salads. He was out sunbathing for the rest of the and then knocking up these terrible gazpachos just by blitzing up tinned tomatoes, and I was in there really trying to do it, and I really loved it. I loved being under pressure. I loved everything about it. I got to all chef whites, and I went back home after that, and I told my mum I was a chef, and started telling her how to cook the Sunday roast.
I love that you followed the traditional UK trip of either, Greece, Benidorm, or Mallorca, and end up in one of those.
Yeah, I've been at all of those places. I've been to. There's a lot of stories there that are not appropriate for the watching. But after Greece, I went to France, and I also worked on the Channel Islands, and then I came back to London and thought, right, I've got to do this properly. So I went to the Savoy Hotel in London, which is the most prestigious 5-star in London, and I think I was on sandwich section for a while, or the hors d'oeuvre section,
cutting off the crust.
Making club sandwiches until there was a position in the pastry department, and then I went down there, and I just absolutely loved it. I was there for years, and learned all of the basics, learned all of a lot of the recipes I still make now were found there, and I worked all my days off, and I would put my hand up to work the bakery department. I just absolutely loved it. I did not want to leave, and I'd work through the night, and I'd do everything. It was crazy. I did some crazy hours, but I learned a hell of a lot, and it just really it fueled me, and I just wanted to go on and do more and more.
Excellent.
It's one of the things I really enjoy about when you listen to chefs, especially when you start reaching that sort of higher level sort of chefs, is the development through going to different places and experiencing the different techniques, the different styles, the different kitchens, ones that might be fully professional, ones that might have a swinging door with a dog walking in and out, and all of those sorts of the building of the repertoire from going to the different experiences, and also then experiencing the different food styles. Is that something that sort of you, through your background, have seen as well? Not through just you, but other chefs you've worked with, that importance of developing that more rounded view?
Yeah. I mean, you're always learning as a chef. They always say that, but that you are. Like, I literally don't. I feel like the more I know, the less I am qualified, because so much out there. There's always something else. I see new techniques all the time. Whether it's just flicking through Instagram or going to restaurants or watching TV shows from overseas. There's always something new. So you're always learning. And I guess that before I moved to Australia, I was working in London. I worked in 5-star properties and really great restaurants all over the place. And I had a bit of an arrogance. I kind of thought that I knew everything. I kept a hell of a lot, and I only knew kind of stuff that I was taught in London. But there's a whole world of cuisine out there that I had no idea about. The Asian cuisine, when I first came to Australia, blew my mind. I had no idea about how good it could be, or the complexities involved, or the different ingredients. So the more you progress, the more you work, the more you learn. You realize the less you know, I guess. And when I first came to Australia, I had this idea in my head that no one over here knew what they were doing, because I hadn't heard anything. I really didn't know. I was quite arrogant, I guess, or quite what's the word? I just didn't
naive.
know. And I didn't know. And I came to Australia and I went, wow, this food over here is amazing. Ingredients are incredible. Restaurants are just out of this world. I've never seen food like this before. And I was just blown away. And then I think I've progressed more and I've learned more since I came to Australia than I did in London. I kind of learned the basics there, which has held me in good stead. But over here, I've been able to be more creative.
Yeah. And I can imagine, like, coming to Australia, my opinion would be, bloody convicts. They just probably gruel, water,
just
dry bread.
They eat gruel and water. Well done. Yes.
I had no idea because there's kind of no tradition that is followed in Australia, because it's a new country, and when you work in France or when you work in London, you're cooking the same sorts of stuff the whole time.
The mother sauces are vital.
There's this tradition that you have to follow. And then when I came over here, I realized it wasn't here. And then I was eating out in restaurants and seeing all this amazing food and people cooking really freely and creatively. And it was kind of like this weight was lifted off my shoulders, and I felt that I could go and do anything, because people over here love food, but they also love to, they love to be wowed, and they love to try new things all the time. Certainly in Melbourne, so I felt this pressure of trying to cook the same stuff and lifted, and then I could just go nuts. And so I opened up, after working at several restaurants in Melbourne, I opened up my business, B&P, Darren Purchese Sweet Studio, and I could kind of do stuff that would never fly in London, or certainly not then. Maybe it is now, but certainly, I was able to express myself. Was
there any time though that you went too far? Like you got all this freedom and you're like, I could do this.
Like often I would come up with stuff, and they wouldn't always work. And also I wasn't very skilled in business at the very start. So, I would change things all the time, and because I felt like I wanted to be creative and be edgy and trying to do it. But if you've got a product that people love, then don't change that.
No, leave it.
Get rid of some of the ones that are not popular. So as I've progressed, I've kind of changed the menu less and less, because we had more and more popular products. I would kind of find out what worked and what didn't work. And I guess it's one of the reasons why I've just closed my business, because I kind of feel like I've reached where it could go. There was there was a lot of products on my menu, and all of them had like fans and followers, and I kind of felt like I couldn't change any of them. And there was food that I couldn't cook because it wasn't applicable to my dessert business. So I kind of, it was from a creative point of view as much as anything else that we've decided to, and I say we, my wife and I, we decided to close the business in order for me to pursue new creative heights, I guess.
And that sort of ties into the other thing I wanted to sort of ask you about, which is you talked about that freedom, but just over the last 10 years in particular, it feels like the Australian food scene's really sort of changed, evolved, and just continued to evolve. Have you sort of, again, is that something you've seen in terms of like types of food, types of ingredients, especially things like Australian native ingredients starting to come more and more into the fore?
Yeah, that's awesome. You know, I think we should be using it absolutely all the time, because there's some amazing ingredients out there, amazing flavors and flavor combinations. And it's great to see it creeping into menus. And it's still a way off, but it is, you should definitely be celebrating what you've got, rather than looking overseas primarily. You can always look to overseas for inspiration and to add on, but I think you should always try and celebrate what you actually have on your own doorstep and work from there. So it's great to see. And I love the Asian influence, and I love the Greek influence, European influence in Australia. I love the Middle Eastern influence. My wife had lots of Middle Eastern restaurants at one point, and her food's beautiful. And I just love that there's a cooking amongst I'm not just chefs, but people in Australia that is not shackled down by tradition. And if you go to France, it'd be very hard for you to cook something wacky.
I think being like a consumer of the food, quite happily, mind you, I feel a lot of pride when I see like Australian like native ingredients, like either featured on local menus or being available in shops and stuff. It's like it feels like we're becoming more like, I can't even put it into words. It's like an identity, but in that kind of like holistic sense of this is food that our traditional owners have used for centuries, thousands of years.
And it's we've seen it as well with some overseas chefs using it. YouTube channels like Sorted Food have started. Their last thing, they did a lot of Australian ingredients.
I was so cheery when I saw Sorted Food bring that out.
Lemon myrtle and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, I'm like lemon myrtle, dude.
Basic.
Basic. Wait till you get some Davidson plum.
Davo plum.
Davo plums, they're everywhere. But it's that sort of exposure and that broader exposure. And obviously, not around anymore, obviously, but when Anthony Bourdain did his couple of Sydney trips and showed everyone that look, there's Sydney and Melbourne, and like, look, there's so much other stuff here. Pay a bit more attention. And it's the other.
Just look at the kinds of Parmigiana.
Look at the parmies and the pubs.
Cities you can get.
But the other thing with that too is things like you said, tradition. We're not bound as much by tradition. That idea of, Christmas is the ultimate one for me, where, you will obviously still get the roasts because
you haven't like a stepfather that insists that you've got to have a pork roast when it's 40 degrees
but
outside.
It doesn't. But again, culturally,
and sweat is pouring down his head, and he's still. I think that's how he gets the flavor into the pork.
But that's the thing. Culturally and geographically, it doesn't always make sense. Things like, again, so seafood and things like that is more and more and more common as well. And I think it's good that we've sort of developing that own identity, and a lot of that being fused in with the Asian influence as well. I really enjoy that exposure.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's just so much more colorful and so much more vibrant. And we're so much richer from having all these influences. And if we can kind of combine those with the amazing ingredients that we have available to us that people have been cooking for thousands of years on this land, then we're winning, I reckon. The Christmas thing, I love Christmas. It's fantastic, but I couldn't get my head around the hot Christmas, and now it's like, why would you want to have Christmas any other? My parents are like, you're going to come over for Christmas? I say, oh, why don't you come over here? Because
There's a view. There's a beach.
yeah, there's a beach. We've got great seafood. It's just great salads. It's just great lifestyle, and it's just a fantastic way of celebrating it. And I just think we're so lucky over here. I certainly feel very fortunate that I ended up here, and I can't imagine living anywhere else.
And to bring it back around as we sort of head towards the end here, I think one of the things you mentioned before, linking into all of this, is the diversity in baking that we see within Australian Bakeoff. And we've talked a lot about Australian and Canadian Bakeoff. Both do this so much better than British does, which is, integrating other styles, other countries, other cultures, forms of baking. In British, they're very tied to the traditional British bakes or the traditional French patisserie, and occasionally do something weird like tacos, which is or Japanese week, which we never speak about Japanese week, but none of it was Japanese. Anyway, the idea that Australian and Canadian, but especially now Australian more and more, is utilizing where we are in the world and introducing people to things that go, yes, French patisserie is amazing and wonderful, and those traditional hearty British bakes are amazing and wonderful, but don't sleep on the amazing baking culture that you'll see with native ingredients and coming out of Asia.
And mochi.
And mochi.
I think there needs to be more mochi in the world.
I agree. I think the integration of it is seamless in the Australian one. It's not something that's consciously done. It's not like, oh, we need someone from this place, we need someone from. It's just a true representation of our population and our acceptance that food comes from all over the place. So what you see in terms of casting of the bakers is exactly what you see looking out the window. And it's what you see if you go around someone's house, they're cooking something different to what you do normally have, or if you go into another restaurant, they're fusing different cultures. That's exactly what you see on Bakeoff. It's just in a more domestic setting, and it's really fun to learn new things, and it's fun to learn what it inspires families all over this country, because not everyone's the same. And you'll still go back to French techniques every now and again, because they kind of invented that thing, and we need to celebrate patisserie week or whatever.
Laminated pastry just needs to I'd like the fusing of laminated pastry and mochi. Yes. That's
who knows. Who knows? You might see that this year.
Is that level of inventiveness, and again, it's something that I think Australian Bakeoff has traditionally done really well, and I feel like will definitely continue to do really well. Is there anything that you would sort of put forward just before we finish up in terms of what people should expect?
People should expect, I guess, the same heartwarming, genuine, fun, enthusiastic, and just feel good show that they've come to love from Bakeoff. Certainly, from my point of view, being a fan in the past means that I'm really conscious that I want it to stay the same. I don't want it to change. So they can certainly expect the same tone, the same just a level of enthusiasm and level of supportiveness from the rest of the bakers to the other bakers. But you can always see surprises. There's going to be some surprises. I'm not going to give away any spoilers on here, but certainly you're going to be seeing bakes from all over the world. You're going to be seeing colourful bakes. You're going to be seeing some absolute triumphs, and obviously some bakes that don't quite go the way the bakers want it.
They're very informal. Yes,
informal side of things.
You're going to see me say I love it a lot, because I just a lot of the bakes on there were absolutely incredible, and that was all I was blurting out. You're going to see Rachel with a lot more probably informative and concise.
Rachel's going,
I've got the cake.
And this, I love it.
Yeah, exactly. I think I was supposed to be like the technical guy, but I just say I love it. It's amazing.
This is great.
So hopefully I get a few gems in there, and I can help to educate the audience as well as help the baker on the day. So hopefully my knowledge comes together and is helpful. I know Rachel's is. You can definitely expect to see some belly laughs from Cow and Nat, and also just some warmth, because it's not always about trying to crack a gag. It's about supporting the people on there, and it just really does feel like the whole production feels like a family. So hopefully that comes across. That's really important to me.
And we're absolutely thrilled to have you as part of the Bakeoff family.
I'm seeing you as the Henry Cavill of the way he looked after The Witcher, being a fan of Bakeoff, coming in to look after that too.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. I didn't quite have his physique at the end of. Certainly, I need to work on my tasting sizes, because I hoed in. I just thought I've got the best job in the world, and then of course on the 12th bake, I'm hardly getting my mouth. But
end of the double filming day, and you're like,
Rachel,
that was a mistake.
Be able to take the smallest bite and give the most eloquent, concise, appreciation of it. So I'm trying to learn off Rachel for next season. Then hopefully I can fit into my clothes that they gave me on week 1, on week 10.
Well, thank you so much, Darren. This has been an absolute delight to get to talk to you. Obviously, let everyone know where they can find you on socials, etc.
Darren Purchase. Check it out. I'll be doing some behind the scenes Bakeoff stuff, and I'll get some bakes up there soon, but I've been very busy. Ooh. But check me out, and I'd love to get connected. I'd love to hear from fans of Bakeoff. So if you send a comment, I'll always read it, and I'll try and get back to people.
Exactly. So thank you very much, Darren, for doing this. This has been absolutely brilliant. We're really looking forward. Obviously, the series starts on Tuesday, so get around that 8:30 lifestyle, and we will catch you all then for that show. But until then, I'm still Chris.
I'm still Kristie,
and we'll see you all later.